to help open the exhibit featuring my mother's story, my mother's documents and photographs, and other memorabilia is a real thrill for me. If you'll notice, on this board behind us, we see 3 languages because it's the Allied Museum from quadripartite Berlin that is sponsoring the exhibit, and it was the quadripartite character of the city of Berlin that gave it such a very special quality. You see, here is the story of Marion's life in Berlin in English. I mean, in English here, in German, in English, and in French. My mother was working in London for the Office of War Information when World War II ended. And she kept some souvenirs from those days at the immediate end of the war. I had no idea what she had kept, how much, or the content of it, until Dr. Trutnow, director of the Allied Museum, came and went through the boxes that I hadn't even opened yet of my mother's memorabilia. These are newspapers from VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. Those are the originals. She saved them. This is teletype paper that came off the machine announcing the end of the war. I had no idea she saved all that stuff. You know what that was like? That was just a rolled up sheet of old paper. And it was our videographer, Tom King, when he was doing some scanning for us, said, "Do you know what you got here?" And I said, "Well, no, as a matter of fact, I don't." Wow, I see all these things my mother saved years ago. Here's a map, throughway plan of Berlin, showing the international sector boundaries. This is the way Berlin was when I lived here, when my mother lived here. Here are transportation maps of the Russian zone, and showing the Russian zone, the American sector, the Russian sector. That's what it was like when I lived here. I can tell you about our part of Berlin. Other memorabilia here from my mother's office. Military entry permit. I love it. Her passport. And the museum staff helping to set up the wonderful display that we are opening on Thursday night, April 23rd, 2009. Here's a good one for you. This is the telephone directory of the American sector. And it's got all those colors on it because when I used to sit there and talk on the phone, I used to fool around with color. And I talked on the phone a lot. You know, teenagers are like that. Kids talk on the phone. I talk to my friends on the phone all the time. And I'd be doing things like coloring the phone book and doodling. A lot of these publications, well, they all date from fourth sector city of Berlin, but a lot of these publications my mother worked on. She was in the Office of Public Information. And I remember these as, well, some of them, as her work. There's a particular one called Berlin Sector that she did that I think is especially good. This picture of my mother was taken just a few short weeks before I came to live with her. This is how I remember her. In uniform, beautiful, competent. I was so proud of her. She accomplished so much. She was as high a rank as any woman had ever gone in the American civilian service attached to the military when this picture was taken. I'm so glad we came to the exhibit today while they're still setting up. It's double confirmation, triple confirmation for me that bringing my mother's things here and sharing them with the world was without question the right thing to do. The museum has already taken great care to present these things in a way that they can be enjoyed, not only by my family, but by the world, by anyone who's interested in that very special slice of history that she and I lived when we were here in Berlin. And it has 8 tunes on it. It's called a barrel organ, or a Leierkoste, a grind box in German. And we've enjoyed it all these years. We played it at parties, we took it to special events, and it was painted over, but it was restored in America to the original finish by a street organ grinder and his monkey. The street organ grinder was named Sam Ketchum, and the monkey's name was Willie. That is the original cart that came with it, and the wheels have right and left hand threads on the wheels. My mother and I were really happy in Berlin for the most part. It was the first time we had ever lived, just the two of us, together. Well, now, Grandma Tulsi was with us from 1946, when I first got here, to 48. But when Grandma and I went back to America in 1948, after a few months in America, I came back to Berlin to be with my mom, and it was just the two of us. As a child of divorce, I was accustomed to being the child of a working mother, cared for by whoever was handy. Sometimes I was parked with my father, sometimes with his family, sometimes with my mother's mother, sometimes with hired housekeepers. But when this picture was taken, that was my high school graduation picture. And my mother and I were the only 2 members of the household, and I just loved it. We got to be really good friends. It wasn't just parent and child. We were good friends. And I will always remember her and treasure her. Not just because she was my mother, but because she was very special.